Hello, everyone. So I'm not entirely sure why I'm here today because I am not typically in the field of surveying, and I'm more of a creative technologist. My background is working with virtual reality originally, making games. Then I moved on to running an innovation hub in Brighton that was supporting startups working in creative and tech backgrounds called the Fusebox. And ultimately, I realized that for my future of VR that I wanted in my metaverse of dreams, which I am, a bit of a nerd for this stuff, I needed AI to come alongside. So AI has become my focus, and I pivoted quite heavily into it. The reason that it actually became so exciting to me, and this was quite a few years ago, was the fact that for someone like me who I like to think I'm a techie, I like to think I'm a programmer, but I'm really not. And actually, can I see a show of hands of who are the programmers in the room? Okay. You probably might not like some of the things I'm going to say today. This is the way that we're going with this stuff. The reason that AI works so well for me is that I'm quite optimistic about it. And I'm quite an enthusiast, and I think that sometimes my attitude to the way that I use AI in my work tends to lead to me having better results than some of my programming friends and people who are working with AI more critically and cynically. I tend to find that the quality of your input, and so this is what I'm going to be talking through the lens of using AI to help with programming, and I want to hopefully, by the end of today, introduce some people who might never have thought of trying to program anything to actually be making their own apps, hopefully, making their own tools, and particularly within the survey space, things that you might like. But I find that generally, if you can be clear and you know what you want, and this is where coming to people like yourselves who are experts in your field, you know far better what you want and what you could design than some external computing or developer coming in and trying to pick away at it. And I think we're getting very close to having the tools to do it. So the way I want to do this today is kind of talk through how I go about vibe coding, and I'm just going to clarify that term because that might be a new one for some people. Vibe coding is the idea, ultimately, of treating AI as a bit of a black box programmer. So the idea being is conversationally, and I'm going to try and get a buzzword on your bingo cards, agentically, talking with an AI assistant and getting it to make the changes to the code, and then you previewing it, iterating and repeating. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the inputs and the way that I go about starting a project and how you could start a project, some of the tools that are out there that are shockingly now getting very non-programmer friendly, which is, again, for the programmers, potentially sometimes a bit scary. And then I'm going to give some stories of some projects that I've worked on, just to give some examples. Again, typically my stuff is quite arts-focused, and I've tried to pivot to give some examples that are a little bit more relevant to some of the things we're talking about here today. And then lastly is outputs and ways in which you, and as managers, and also working with potentially students and other people under you, how you can help push this forward and see what you can do internally. So, there are so many AI tools out there, and I'm not here to be I'm not paid by any of these companies, and I'm not here to evangelize for any of them, but I am quite enthusiastic about some. Hands up, are we familiar with these? Some people used a lot of these? Yeah, there's a lot of hands, good. And everyone kind of has a favorite, and the problem with the AI space is that this is already out of date when I submitted my slides, and it's out of date again as of yesterday with some of the updates. There's always someone on top, and there's always tools that people are saying, this is the best one, this is the killer, this is going to be the thing. However, for anyone who is just interested in dabbling in what I'm talking about today, I really can't fail pointing and suggesting have a play with AI Studio as part of Google, part of Gemini. The fantastic thing with that is you literally log in, it's on the web, you don't mess up your computer, you don't accidentally install anything. It's all making websites and web apps. It provides access to all of the Gemini features, the image generation, language models, all the rest. And it gives you an interface where it goes, what do you want to make? And you just type it in, give it a go. And I really recommend it, as well as the fact they give a free trial to university students, which again, that's quite beneficial. I'm spending £350 a month on subscriptions at the moment, so this does get a little bit out of control. Copilot, that's made by Microsoft, and a lot of people are probably familiar with that. Again, if you're at university, you tend to get forced to use Office 365. You've probably even seen the term Copilot pop up. The cool thing with Copilot as well is the fact that you can swap between models, and it's built into Visual Studio Code. So if you're really comfortable as a programmer and you do know how to program, people are dabbling around with that. Codex, which is OpenAI's newest tool, that is really fantastic for basically you can run it, I set stuff on my phone and go, hey, make these changes. And I can go away for coffee and come back and I can keep checking on my phone while it's doing it. Really good for testing and background. And then there's quite a lot of different tools that are now coming in the form of a CLI, which is a command line interface, which allows you to have access to your command prompts and all your terminal and basically make changes on your computer. The reason that I'm mentioning it here, and again, all these tools can kind of do all the same things. They can all make apps, they can all program and make different tools. One of the cool benefits of the CLI, again, Gemini's one free if you're a university student, is the fact that, say, again, in context for people here, say you've got a folder full of video files of interviews, but you need to extract every fifth frame of the interview as an image for reporting. You can just ask Gemini, hey, I've got this folder, go sort it please, and it will write the code, give you the files. And again, it's not really programming, it's just a really practical way of using AI to actually do things on your computer. And I got my dad using it, so I know it's working. Now, the way that I would recommend starting a project, again, I have a little bit of programming experience, so I know about databases. I know a little bit about how to structure data and data flows and how to engineer a system. But I'm finding that increasingly, ChatGPT also does know those answers. Oh, that was another one from the bingo. So with the way that I approach a project is I like to have a discussion with an AI assistant of choice. I've got this problem that I need to solve. How would you solve it? And it comes up with a plan. And quite often, if you go, hey, I'm thinking of making this now, can you give me like a technical solution or like an MD document, like a plan document? I just take that document, copy paste it straight into AI Studio, and say, make it for me. And honestly, like again, I feel like I'm not trying to do anything special here. It's not particularly technical, but nobody else, or like very few other people seem to actually just be trying these things and seeing, oh, yeah, actually it does. I was paying this company £1,000 a year for this piece of software, or £1,000 a month for this piece of software. Actually, I can just do it myself now. So maybe start with something that you know, a tool that you already use, and just try and make your own version of it. Now, as you converse with it, you can refine the plan, and you can go, hey, I've got this idea, but can you pick out the problems with it? Again, just iterating through that plan and ending up with a nice structured proposal. Some of the tips and general things to pay attention to, again, this is kind of a new field, so I'm still learning, and this is where my research at Royal Holloway is coming in, is what are the gaps what are the bits of programming and technical skills we should be teaching people from sort of an engineering perspective without needing to teach all the syntax of how to actually do full-on programming, because there's bits that are valuable. But the things that I really pulled out is having a clear goal of what you want to make, giving some constraints. Again, if you're in the programming space and you don't want it using TypeScript, tell it not to use TypeScript. There's quite handy to put some restrictions in place. Context, the more information you can give it, the better. One of my favorite ways to actually create an app these days is do an interview with the client, just an hour-long Zoom call, transcribe the Zoom call, paste that into AI Studio and go, make the thing that solves the problem we discussed in this meeting. And again, it quite often does a far better job than hiring someone to do it. And the more context you give, the better. Again, the tone, that's the bit where I think my luck comes in. If you're really cynical and critical with it and telling it not to do things and it's not going to be right, it's sometimes actually it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whereas when you're positive and going, that's a great job, well done, call it a good boy, and it does better. Funnily enough, it works for me as well. If I get a pat on the head, I do better as well. Then we have the small first steps. So if it is a really complicated thing, and I don't want to overwhelm it, start with something simple. Get the bare minimum prototype working, and then go back to the AI and go, make it better. Add this. And again, curious attitude. I think that's my main strength more than anything else. Is just the fact that, again, I didn't know anything about surveying coming into this, but I now have a reasonable experimentation because I was interested, so I've been having a play. So the first project, and the reason that I'm actually here, that I'm going to talk about, is I accidentally stumbled upon synthetic survey data and synthetic surveying, mostly because I was preparing to do a survey myself, part of my own research, and then I got carried away because I like doing data viz and using good data studio and things. So I made a really cool data viz, but then I had no data to test if the data viz looked good. So I thought, well, maybe I can use AI to make some. But then I was thinking, how would you do this? So I'm going to show a video and try and talk over it. Hopefully the video plays. Again, this is Google AI Studio that I built it in. You see the nice describe your idea. And as I say, it's out of date because we're now up to Gemini 3, which came out this week. And it's again, if you've tried it before, AI programming, you probably had some bad results. Try the newer models. Like every time it's like moving up like 3 years of experience in a developer. They're getting better and better. And so here's the example of the sort of, again, this was just to get some data for me to test some data viz. But this is let's see if it plays. Yes. So here, again, AI has written all the code. I can just about read enough code to figure out what it's doing, but I wouldn't be able to write that myself. Here you can go and create a persona, and you can, again, I know nothing about what is important for personas. This is why I'm coming to talk to you people, because you would do this far better than I ever could. But again, you can type in a prompt, like I think in this case, an experienced retired businessman, and now Gemini is going to fill in all the personality details that it associated with that person, which could be interesting. And you can even generate little avatar pictures. Again, the reason I'm showing this is because I made this in about 30 minutes. So I don't know this area, but people who do will do better. The other thing is the cohort manager, you can actually get it to generate 100 diverse people of different groups, depending on what your criteria was. And then I did the option to either do a structured interview where you can have multiple questions being qualitative and quantitative, or just ask a single question for now. And then it would just ask all the personalities the question. But at the end of the day, I just said, I want an app that helps me create survey data so I can test my data viz. And seeing the stuff that's being talked about here today, I know that people are making tools like this, again, but you might have a better idea of how the tool for you is exactly personalized. Moving on to another project, just to tangent this, this is where prototyping comes in. I'm going to talk a minute about how dangerous it can be when it goes wrong. I'm just checking, how am I doing for time? Okay, fine. It's showing how dangerous it can be when it goes wrong, but with things like, we're working on industry projects as part of my PhD, and this is an application which is designed for a study assistant for schools. Again, we built this in about 2 weeks of prototyping, but it's a fully functional application rather than just a wireframe. And this is a conversational AI assistant for schools where the students can talk with an AI buddy who's intentionally been made naive to not actually give them the answers, but to help them. Again, my colleagues were doing some fantastic research around this, but this whole application was all built in a couple of weeks, and it actually, the school's now installing it as part of their full-on process. So it's crazy rate of application development. Another project which I can't really talk about, I can't show it because I didn't have rights for the video, but one of the projects I worked on was working with theatre writers who wanted to do laughter detection and have a branching narrative experience that changes whenever someone laughs in the experience. I realized quite early on that actually laughter is quite hard to do without smiling. So again, quite interested to see what your thoughts are. But there's a library called Face API that allows you to measure micro-detections in subtle facial expressions. And one, it's very hard to hide a smile from it, so that was quite good. And we ended up having a whole branching experience that would branch the narrative depending on whether the user smile, look sad, get excited by the experience. And I thought, again, within surveying, you might be interested in that, so just a cool project. But this is something I just went to the AI and said, hey, look, I want to do make the video branch whenever someone laughs. And it figured out the libraries, figured out the tools, and built it. And then just a fun one, and this actually ties in quite well to some of the AI personality stuff. I've got a business card, which I think I've got a couple in my bag if someone wants to have a look, which is using WebAR to be a holographic mini-me, where you can chat to me. It has all my research papers and all my knowledge base of different things that I'm doing. It sounds like me, and I've 3D scanned myself so it looks like me. Again, if we were to do this with the synthetic survey data, now you could actually have these synthetic personalities answer questions, but then also do a face-to-face interview with these synthetic personalities as well. So I think there's some cool connection to come. Just to show the example, there might be some sound, I don't know. If not, it's just my voice anyway. But that's on the back of my business card, and it uses WebAR, so it all goes to the browser. And again, I tried to...
Hi, I'm Chris. What's your name and how can I help?
You get the idea. So
Hey there, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. It's been a pretty interesting...
Okay, we're done with that. We don't need two of me. Now, the cool thing with this, the reason that I think that's really cool, though, is I tried to make this myself when I was programming several years ago, and I made it kind of work very badly. But then years later, I've just come back, and this is where old projects start coming back up in my head, and went, hey, AI, can you fix this for me now? Suddenly, it's now made the app work on every device. It's cross-platform. I think it's quite a cool product, but I'm too excited making different things to ever pursue it as its own product. This will upset programmers, I'm sure. Again, I'm not trying to say that this should replace programming. I think in many ways, my analogy a little bit was tied to manual cars versus automatic cars, and now we're heading to self-driving cars potentially, and not everyone's ready for self-driving. But for prototyping and for getting quick ideas out internally in teams, I just want more people to be excited about this and more people doing it, particularly people who think, I'm not a programmer. These days you probably could be. Now, this is where I want to, just before I go and make everyone sound super excited, there's some really scary papers that are saying that over 25% of AI-generated code on GitHub has security vulnerabilities, has database breaches, has exposed API keys. So I'm going to say again, be careful. Don't necessarily deploy these to your clients. Hand it over to an expert still to have a look at it. But give it 2 years and maybe we won't need to. I don't know. It's just moving forward so quickly. Things like Google's just released a project called Code Mender, which actually looks through your projects and tries to identify these security flaws, and they'll probably integrate that into Gemini and into their tools. But just sort of, yeah, I'd say play around, but just bear in mind that it's probably going to break. And then I think we're almost at the end, but my workflow is to start with an idea, plan it out, get the AI to generate it, do a test, show it to people. Again, people are a lot better, stakeholders are a lot better at telling you what they don't like when they can see something than telling you theoretically what they might like. Again, we get that, the faster horses type situation. And then demo it. And just for the managers and for people here, what I would recommend, if you get the chance, run some hackathons. If you see people like me who get really excited by this stuff, try and encourage them, because I like, as I say, pat on the head. If you get a chance, what I would do is run an hour a week or like a hackathon occasionally and just say, look, we make tools. Here's the thing. I've paid for the subscription for you. Go make some stuff and see what you think and see what we can do. And reward people for this curiosity of maybe the way we're doing things isn't the best and maybe I can make a better solution. I think that kind of covers the same points. Covers the same points. I feel like I'm repeating myself here again. Only because I'm at the end. And just to end up, this was one of my favorite projects, my first ever Vibecoded project. I was working with some poets, and they were saying, oh, I'd love it if we could have, this was back when image generation was new, can we have it visualize my poetry with images as I'm talking? And so we ended up with something like
I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand.
That goes on. Thank you, everyone. Has anyone got any questions? All at the back.
I'll get there eventually. Hello. I've tried for the last 35 years or so to be a professional programmer. So I'm not saying AI will take my job, bingo. But I wonder, once you've done a prototype, you're happy with it, it doesn't quite work, and then you need to maintain it, make it a product. How does that work? And I find, reading somebody else's code really hard. I find reading my code really hard. So how does that work if you need to make it a product?
Mm-hmm. In all honesty, I don't know yet. Not everything, to be fair, nothing, I'm the type of person I'm so scatterbrained with my ideas and projects that I never see a project through to that level of completion. I like prototyping and sort of showing off things. The only thing I can say is that the trend in that improvement in quality and reliability is, like, I think I must have skipped over the slide, but back in 2022, it could barely make a Hello World website that would load reliably. Now it's handling massive multi-page projects, which, again, it's the same question as if I had made something myself. it would never be ready for production. I'd still have to hand it over to an expert who could try and figure it out and piece it together. I think the main point is just to test if the idea works, and then you know whether it's worth putting the money in for now. But it's very hard to see the trends that are happening and not think this is probably going to accelerate and maybe get better. Does that get you?
Chris, thanks for a great talk. You're at Royal Holloway, right?
I am, correct.
So we're at this wonderful time right now where we can have an idea, get a proof of concept together, and then give it to an expert architect if we need to go into production, right? An expert. But he's only become an expert, or she, because they've put 20 years in doing it the hard way.
Exactly.
So how are we building the next generation of experts when we've basically got ideas and experts at the moment? Are we going to lose this moment?
I mean, there's one... I had a little bit of the analogy about a manual versus an automatic, that... It's like, I still like driving a manual car because I like to have to control the vehicle and all the rest of it. And there's still people that are going to like to drive the classics and do it properly. My question, again, I'm just seeing this exponential trend in capability from the programming. Ultimately, even the way that we look at applications going to be the same? Will we have people making one-off applications, or would everyone make the exact tool that they need for that moment, at the time? I just think that the quality is just going to get better and better, because the thing is, I thought I was a decent programmer 3-4 years ago, and as soon as it started making consistent HTML, I knew it had already overtaken me, and so I kind of accepted that, and I'm just waiting to see how far it goes.
So you're saying that we might not need experts, just ideas?
I think we will. There will always be room for experts, but I'm hoping that we might. The big thing for me is working with creatives and artists. They don't have the budget to hire experts, ever. They never have and never will, and so we need another solution for these type of people to start making stuff. And once you get really creative people making lots of stuff, I think some of the experts might find it hard to actually compete sometimes, because there's going to be so much other stuff coming up from other people. But I'm not trying to be a doomer. I actually, I love tech, I love all the gadgets, I just want more stuff and more creative people making stuff. That's kind of the goal.
Wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Chris. More of a note of caution to everyone who got excited about putting your interviews into Google. Just make sure you check the GDPR. You might need some impact assessment stuff before you stick all your consumer interviews into tools like that.
Absolutely. The thing as well with things like AI Studio is the fact that even the code it makes is running on Google Cloud, and it's already hosted. That's why the reason things like Copilot running it locally, the code at least locally gives you a lot more control if you're worried about those things. Again, pumping surveys into ChatGPT or any of the rest. The only thing that is to be said is that OpenAI released, that was a buzzword one, released an open source language model called GPT-OSS, which you could run the big one locally at home in theory, and with that you could use that to create your plans if you wanted to. Again, the trouble with open source AI and a lot of the tools that are more protected is they generally tend to be worse than the cutting edge ones. So it's kind of a game of finding where your limit is. But be careful. Don't let me get you in trouble.
Really, really interesting talk. I was just wondering, so if I were to prototype and then potentially build an app or a product with an AI, and it's just sort of vibe coding, it's writing all that, is there issues around intellectual property and potentially copyright? If something else is making my app, can I legally sell that myself?
I think it's a bit of a grey area at the moment, as it probably is for a lot of things. I think with programming, it's because again, I'm coming from the creative side where I'm normally dealing with artists who are doing music production and image and painting and things, and they're all very worried about the sort of IP and the protection of that. I think with programming, there's always been a history of, it's a little bit more, going on. I just used to copy code wherever I found it and steal it. That was, everyone posted their code on the internet. There's so much of it. So I think, weirdly, I find that actually AI code is more original quite often than some of the AI images or AI, other modalities. But yeah, it's a tough one. I'm hoping that ultimately, I think the person who prompted it ultimately deserves those rights, because I think the idea wouldn't exist without that person coming up with the motivation to do it. Once we start having AIs that are then also prompting the AIs to start making apps, then maybe then I start to see the IP ownership gets a bit messy when you say, make me an app that's going to make me £1 million, and then you have an AI that goes off and figures out how to make an app to make £1 million. Then I don't know who owns that, but yeah, it's obfuscation, I suppose. But it's also a lot of the time when a company hires a programmer to make the app. Does that programmer own the application, or does the company that hired them own it as well? So hopefully that. I don't know. Is that everyone? Lovely.
Well done. Great. Thank you
Thanks,
very much,
everyone.
Chris.